Been in the valley over 80 years, familiar with a lot of changes that have happened here. When this event happened, I was working in the paper mill. And then after that, I went to the fire department and was there for 30 years. So I was quite involved with emergency stuff. The event happened on March 27th, 1964. And there was an earthquake in Alaska, and we ended up, because of the way things are situated, with water coming up the inlet and causing the tsunami here. Started, actually, the story should start about in Nanaimo, because some friends were coming home from university, and I was down there. Actually, I took who's my wife now, I took her back to Nanaimo to catch the bus to Victoria. She was in nurses training. And there was a girl there that wanted to ride back to Port Alberni. And she said, I don't know why I'm coming back to Port Alberni. Nothing ever happens here. And I thought that was pretty good when this happened for her. But when I got back to town, I met up with two of my friends. And we were driving around town, we went out Beaver Creek, and we were just driving around looking at things that had changed since they left. And when we went by where Glutasy Marina is now, we looked at the river, and there was logs going up the river. So we decided that wasn't right. We stopped and got out. And by the time we got out, water was coming across the road. So we left there and came over to, in those days it was Port. We were in Alberni then. Now we came to Port. And at the foot of Argyle Street, on the wharf that the Lady Rose was tied up at the end of, we were out on the wharf trying to figure out what was happening. And police came down and said, you guys get out of here because there's another wave coming. Well, the first wave is going out. When we got there, the Lady Rose was as high as the wharf. And before we left, we could look right over the wheelhouse and it had gone down, because what happened with the wave was as far as it came up, it went down that far. So it sucked everything out again. I say wave, but it was a high tide, because we didn't have a great huge wave. It was a tide that didn't stop where it should have. So when they told us to get out of there, we went up on the hill by where the Sea Cadet Hall used to be and watched the next one come in. And in fact, we even saw the Lady Rose break two lines, the mooring lines. And I found out afterwards from the fellow whose father owned the boat that they got on the boat. There was one line holding it, and they went out that line to get on it and started it up and took it out into the inlet. After that, we just drove around looking at things. One of my friends lived out by Paper Mill Dam, and we woke his parents up, and there was the Paper Mill Dam is as high up as the tide goes, and there was still logs going up and down the river there. So they were quite shocked. And then the next day it was a bit of a cleanup stuff here, where there's a lot of these pictures, and I helped with that. And one of the problems from this wave was that the water line from Sproat Lake to the paper mill got damaged, and the mill was shut down. So I don't remember how many, but maybe 10 or 12 of us young guys that were in the mill, they flew us over to, actually it's from Courtney, but they flew us over to Powell River to start up 3 paper machines over there and work on them until they got the thing up and running. Well, it didn't take that long. I think only a week or so, or less than 2 weeks to get the pipeline fixed in the mill again. So we were back home again working here. I say the wave, that the way I saw it, was high tide, and it came up just like the tide would come, but it didn't stop where it should have. And then it went back out, and that continued all through the next day. It was back and forth in the inlet, but there was only 3 very high ones. Well, it's changed a lot in the valley, I guess, because I didn't realize it at the time, but a few years ago, I was talking to people in somewhere that we have one of the largest dike systems around in the valley now. River Road, which is the Highway 4 going out to Fino and Ucluelet, is now approximately 8 feet higher than it used to be. It served as a dike because all the homes along River Road and in that area, the water would come up near them. Even in the wintertime, their front yards would be flooded. But this was worse than that, and it moved quite a few of them off their foundations. So that's been solved, and there's a good system of dikes here now, and they have valves on that let water out and not water in, sort of thing. We also have it was the second warning system on the coast. Cannon Beach, Oregon had one, and we got one here. I believe there's more now, but we have that. It's what it is it's sirens. There's 4 of them here, and now First Nations has put in a couple more somewhere. And it's a warning system that people can hear. And it's not just a siren, because sirens that they've had down south in some of the countries down there. The sirens go off and people run to the beach to see what's going on. They have no idea. These things are sirens, are capable of being sirens, but they're speakers. So we can tell people what to do. That system is operated from the fire hall in Port Alberni. So that's something that's relatively new. I'm talking about new because I've been retired 25 years. So these things happened before I retired. Well, and there are signs around now showing a bit about where the evacuation routes are, and more people are aware of it, I believe. That probably because of the weekly or monthly testing of the system. It tests and it comes on and it says this is a test, only a test of the tsunami warning system. So the other thing that people should know about that, it's because some people complain, oh, I can't hear that in my house when my TV's going. Well, it was never meant for that. It was meant to make a noise and for you to go outside and listen. And then you could announce what was happening. And this tsunami system could be used for more than just tsunamis, forest fires or whatever else. The speaker system works for that. I was always a Boy Scout and doing stuff like that. So I was pretty prepared. We do have our emergency kit and that. I had a motorhome for a long time, and I now have a travel trailer. And part of my excuse for having that's my emergency shelter, because if anything happens, I could live in that. And I used to, when I was working involved with the emergency preparedness, I used to go around, travel around, not travel, but go around to different groups and speak or let them know about what they should do and shouldn't do. And I often said, if this should happen somewhere, best place I would like to be was in Port Alberni, because in this town, there was a lot of loggers, a lot of people that did stuff. They had, in your neighborhood, you could find within 2 or 3 houses, somebody that knew first aid, somebody that had a power saw. So if there was trees across the road, you could clear them and get out. And that's, that's just our way of life here. We've been prepared for it, but probably a little more prepared about it now, but there's still, people don't seem to understand it, to do what friends of mine did. If you go down to the waterfront to see what's happening, well, that's not what you do. And we've had a couple of warnings here, and we've had to have fire department and police go down and block the roads off so that people didn't come down to the waterfront to get in trouble. Basically, it's just got food, and the other thing that I do, and I've done for years and years, is in the deep freeze, I have several old juice containers, or like, they're not milk containers because I didn't like to use milk because it could be sour and stuff. Old juice containers filled with water and frozen. And my rationale for that is that I have the water in the freezer. If power goes out or something happens and my freezer quits working, I still have a few days of frozen in there. And I've had that for years and years, actually. Well, because there's not too many of us left that witnessed the thing happening. And I just like to let people know what I saw in real life. The only thing that I guess is that people that weren't here that dream about it talk about this huge wave that came up the inlet. Well, perhaps it did, but once it got near the town, it was not a large surfable wave. It was a high tide. And that's what we saw here. Because of that, I guess you could get away from it, but not. I wouldn't try and outrun it, except if you're very close to the water. But it didn't come in like you hear and see pictures of down south or in the tropics or other places where the people rush down and this huge wave wipes them away. Well, that didn't happen here, but it moved a lot of houses and did a lot of damage. One thing was my brother gave me heck because I didn't move his car out of the pulp mill parking lot, and he got what? Not you didn't lose it, but it got covered in salt water, so it got chucked away. I don't know. Like I said, I've always been involved with emergency stuff and looking after myself and family. So I guess all it does is it helped to reinforce when I tell other people things that should happen or they should do so that it doesn't happen. That probably gives me a little bit more credence than it before. Well, I guess it's the same standard advice you give anybody. It doesn't hurt to know your neighbors a bit so that you can work with them. Like I said earlier about power saws and first aid and trucks, people have them here. And the other thing, we're lucky here that there is quite a few places where you can get fresh water if the system goes down. That's just a fact of Port Alberni. Have some equipment available so that you can do that if you need it, even if it's some empty buckets that are clean. That's pretty important too. We've been involved with emergency preparedness for a long time in this town. And every year on Emergency Preparedness Week, we have demonstrations and things. And it's very disheartening that you put a lot of work into it. And Christine, you'll probably see that. And you won't get that many people come out. And then if something happens, they'll say, well, why didn't you tell us this? Well, we spent a whole week trying to tell you, and you didn't come to look. And that's something that would be nice if people would be a little more involved with. And houses, where the houses can be, you can't have sleeping accommodations below the high tide mark or the high level mark. There are houses in the area that you can build in, but you have to have the sleeping areas above where the water is supposedly be able to go. Also, inside the dike areas, you're not allowed to put a bunch of fill in there to take up room that should be storage for water. So that's something that's happened here that other places don't do. And I just can't believe every spring when runoff comes, how many people or how many places in the interior and Fraser Valley get flooded. And it doesn't appear that they've done enough work over there. And we've done a pretty good job here, I think, of eliminating those problems that reoccur.